Hello, everybody. Welcome. Today is July 28th, 2020, and I hope everybody's had a good week. I hope everybody has been safe and working through the lockdown with COVID. I know it's difficult on everybody, and all we could do is do our best to get through it. It will come to an end. I know it doesn't seem like it's around the corner, but pretty soon, I believe, we're going to get through this, and we're going to be stronger as a result. My guest today, is a friend, Sean J. Kennedy. Sean's a wonderful percussionist. He is super creative. He's got entrepreneurial drive, which we'll talk about. He's a great drummer, great classical percussionist, an author. He has his own podcast that I was fortunate to be a guest on. So if you have questions for Sean or for me or for both of us, please put them in the comments section, where we really invite questions, because we like to provide answers and information that's valuable to percussionists and percussion educators like yourself. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Sean in from the virtual green room. Sean?
Hey, Neil. Thanks
welcome.
For having me. Hey, Neil. Thank you.
Hey, it's great to see you. How have you been?
Oh, good. Just trying to stay busy and productive in these crazy times.
Yeah, no, you're a busy guy, so I'm imagining that this COVID lockdown really impacts a lot of your performances that you had scheduled going on this summer.
Oh, yeah. Tons of stuff were canceled, like for everybody. I'm usually out a couple days a week doing either a big band gig one day, playing with an orchestra, something, teaching a marching band or any aspect of music. I'm usually out of the house, and then been confined like everyone else for all these months now.
Right. Well, you said you've been busy. Are you doing recording projects? Are you writing? I know I have to say before I forget, your arrangement of The Downfall of Paris is out of sight. If people haven't seen it, they could go to YouTube. There's a video on YouTube, isn't there?
Yeah, we have 3 videos of it, actually. We have, I took an old arrangement I had for brass quintet that I used to use for me as a feature just on snare drum. I added all these other drummers. So the recording engineer was so good that we have 3 videos on YouTube. We have the full ensemble with brass quintet and 7 percussionists. We have one with just the 7 percussionists, and then one with just the brass. So if you put The Downfall of Paris, the name of the group is the Rolling Buzzards Brigade. We've gotten
it's great, and the music's available if people want to buy it, isn't it?
Yep, it's on my website. Yeah, you can buy the full score. A couple of folks in Europe have already picked up the full score, or you can just buy the individual parts. And I've been called out a couple times on the internet because I changed a couple of the little nuances in the snare drum part because I'm a drum set player, and as I played it, I'm like, I want to add a 16th note, but a couple of guys, and they're like, hey, did you change it? I'm like, I did it on purpose. So yeah.
Tell them it's not ordained by God. It's just a piece of music.
Exactly. Yeah, I know.
I really can't get into when people are afraid to make changes. Music is fluid. Interpretations that composers built and stole off each other and moved it forward, and that's what's so great about it.
Right. Yeah, a lot of times I think Bach and Mozart, we have all the written scores, but at some live gig, I bet they changed something. They said, "Oh, let me just do this instead." I can't imagine they would. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they were improvising. They were great improvisers. I mean, I think sometimes the concert world, the legit world, as I'll call it, has become too sacrosanct. It's like nothing can be changed. Like I heard a musician once talk about the concert hall as being a hollowed temple. It's a concert hall. I mean, it's a place to make music. It's a place to entertain, to challenge. And, sometimes I think people really are resistant. It's amazing that musicians would be resistant to change.
Yeah. You just reminded me of something like Tchaikovsky's Fourth Symphony. Like, I have a couple recordings of it, and I like the 4 different recordings because each conductor did it differently.
Right, right.
If they all did it the same, what's the point of doing it again?
Absolutely. Years ago, I was performing in Naples, Florida with the orchestra as a guest. We were playing Carmina Burana, and I added a cymbal crash in one place. It was just missing, I thought.
Uh-huh.
And one of the percussionists in the section kind of almost had a coronary, like you killed somebody. I said, "Look, it belongs there. I think it. But I'm throwing it out there." The conductor didn't say anything.
Right.
I know. Yeah, but I think you're a drum set player as well as a legit percussionist, and so am I. I started out as a drum set player.
Right.
I think we think a little differently about things like that because in drum set, you're free.
Oh, yeah. You get a skeleton, and they're like fill in all the pieces, and you hopefully you bring yourself to the performance. That's what I try to do. Yeah,
absolutely. Sean, so it's interesting in terms of you play drum set with an orchestra. I know with Philly Pops.
Yeah, I've subbed with them. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's a tough chair.
Oh, yeah.
Fred Buda, the famed drummer in Boston Pops, used to say, when we play In the Mood, he'd say, it's like trying to swing an elephant.
Exactly, right.
And do you play in the back? Or, do they have the drums in the back?
When I did sub with them, I was up in the front in a plexiglass, box.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's hard. It's like having a large boat that doesn't turn very fast.
Yeah, and it's a dance, I think, because I always think when the conductor's there, he only has one stick and I have two. So who's more in charge? I'm not sure. Like if you're doing a pop tune, it's like I'm louder. If the first trumpet goes with me, then there we go.
Right. Right.
It's a delicate balance.
Well, some conductors feel threatened by getting it in the pocket, like they lose control. But they should just stand up there and look good. Just smile.
Yeah, the drummer they have to do. Right. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Absolutely. What would you say? What did you do to prepare for playing drum set in an orchestra? Did you do anything kind of differently, or did you approach it? I'm sure you had different thoughts than when you were playing a jazz trio or a quartet.
Yeah, it was a pop show. It was all like soul music and Motown, the last one I did. And, if I didn't know the recordings intimately, I got to know the originals, of course. So that the music kind of was just, there were marks along the way, and I didn't have to have my eyes in the music so much. So I tried to memorize the charts as much as I could, just have it there as a reference. And like I said, it's that weird balance. If there were 4 people on stage, it would lock like that. But with however many are in an orchestra, and plus the conductor, luckily I've played with a lot of the guys and the ladies in the Philly Pops before, and we kind of have played jazz together, so it kind of gelled.
When you played, was Peter Nero conducting? Was he still around?
No, Mike Krajewski.
I've worked with Michael. Yeah, he used to have a thing where he would come on and he'd want the orchestra to play the theme from Rocky.
Yeah, we did. Yeah,
that's part of his shtick, right?
Oh yeah.
He got some funny stuff.
Yeah,
he was a funny guy.
I played a couple with him in Philly, in Jacksonville, and Atlanta, and he was cool. He's a conductor I think a drum set player would like to work for, because he would start, but then if we were just laying it down doing a Temptations tune, he was just kind of enjoying the music and his stick was barely moving, and then
that's a smart conductor. That's smart. Our friend. We have a comment from our friend Al Cohen, who's a great drummer himself. The more people in the ensemble, the more important groove becomes over complexity. Yeah, I think that's very well stated, Al. Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. But, orchestra players, strict orchestral players, string players especially, who don't play jazz or don't play, rock or groove, they were all very focused on the page. They have trouble getting off the page.
Yep.
And it always used to drive me crazy in some jazz charts or some pop charts that are written dotted 8th, 16th. And it really should be swung like a triplet. Right. No matter what you told them, they wouldn't do it. They couldn't do it.
Yeah. And, luckily the Philly Pops, years ago when I subbed with them, a lot of those string players and winds they're crossover players. So they understood, they know the nuance, and it's like, oh, dotted A16th, we'll just swing it. And they're very cool. So, yeah.
Right. There's always this question on dotted A16th. In certain types of music, I hear them double dotting it and waiting.
Yeah.
And then, where is it? Where is that 16th? And it changes. It's relative.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's kind of like, I know you played with a Strauss type orchestra.
Yeah.
I saw that you guys did a New Year's Eve thing, which was great.
Yep.
And it was on TV. And you get to those Viennese waltzes, and the percussionists anticipate the second beat.
Right.
Where is it? I mean, you got to just feel it some way.
That's one of the conductors that I did that tour with. It might have been Peter Guth, I forget, the guy that started this whole Salute to Vienna thing. Called it. He was laughing, but he said he called it Viennese negligence. He said, imagine it's 2 a.m. and you've had a little too much to drink, and then that'll tell you where the beat belongs. So you kind of just had to feel your way through it.
I heard somebody refer to it as pregnant 3. Pregnant 2. It's like,
yeah, exactly.
It's not. Yeah, but that's what's so great about music. It's an art form. It's not math.
Right. It's fluid. It changes every day,
all the time. Mm-hmm. So, Sean, one of the things that impressed me about your bio is the wide range of experiences you've had. I saw you played with Rocktopia, which I saw was a show in New York. A friend of mine is a fiddle player in it, Murray Nesbitt. And it's the first thing I've seen that successfully combines rock and classical. I thought it was really good.
Yeah, it was fun. It was weird because they send you a PDF of the charts like a week before. Here, get your stuff. And on paper, I forget what it was. Was it Nessun Dorma and Dream On? Maybe. I'm like, really? How's that going to work? But the arrangers and the production company really did a nice job putting it all together.
Yeah, it does work. I know a lot of people would, snub their nose at it and say, well, it's schlocky. But when I saw it in New York, people loved it. People who don't come to the symphony, right, kind of knew some of the melodies and really loved it. It's great. It's anything they could do to bring people into the concert hall, to me, is wow.
Yeah, if the seats are full, I think it's working,
Right. Otherwise, we're going to work ourselves out of work if they get too snobby with things. You gotta bring people in the seats.
Yep, that's exactly right. Yeah, that was a great show. I wish I could have done more. I was a sub in the orchestra on the road when they were on the road, and they picked it up, and I did the show, and that would have been a really fun show to do for a long time.
Was that Allentown Symphony who did that, or
no? It was out in Reading.
Oh, Reading.
Yeah.
Randall was the conductor. Randy. I think
the piano player was the conductor. The
Henry. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
No, it's a fun thing. So of all, I know you worked with Dave Brubeck.
I didn't play with him, but I got to hang with him. Yeah.
Oh, you got that? I saw the picture. There's a picture.
Yeah. I got to hang with him and talk to him. That was a thrill of a lifetime.
Right. So, Sean, tell us a little bit about your background, how you began, the path you took to become the successful professional that you are.
Well, in grade school, my parents made me take piano lessons. I resisted, but then I started playing cartoon melodies on the piano and kind of ignored the Beethoven and Mozart that my teacher wanted. But the two worlds did collide because I started to realize if I had facility, I could play my cartoon music better. So for the first 4 or 5 years of my life, I was a piano player. Then when I got to high school, they threw me on xylophone for marching band since I was a piano player. Right. And I was like, this isn't too bad. And then the first time I ever heard live drums is when I was going into 9th grade. The drum line came over in the parking lot to play with the mallet section, and that was it. It was like the heavens opened up and a choir started singing when I heard the drums. I was like, that's what I want to do. And I started taking lessons from a great teacher named Ray Dealey, who was real busy in Vegas and Atlantic City. Mm-hmm. And I was really fortunate in high school. I didn't realize how lucky I was. He would go play with Sinatra in Atlantic City, and then that week he'd come teach private. I had private lessons in high school, in the high school building that were provided.
Wow.
Right.
Great.
So he would come in.
For the Northeast. You grew up in Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah, right outside Philly. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean in Texas that's very normal,
Right.
I think, but up in the Northeast it's not.
Yeah, they had my band director there was a really good. He's a woodwind specialist, so he taught all the woodwinds. He had a brass guy come in and teach the brass, and he had Ray come in and teach all the percussion. And
Right.
every week I'd go up and just hang with him and hear stories. And when he played with Sinatra and all these legends, and I'm like 13 years old, and he was with Sinatra
Wow.
3 days before. So
Wow.
that's kind of where it started.
Wow. Did he go over any of those Sinatra charts with you? The Nelson Riddle charts? They're great
Yeah.
charts. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'd go over those, and he'd tell me a lot of stories. He had said one story. He was in Atlantic City, and he was on percussion on the date, and they're doing the rehearsals because everyone knows Sinatra didn't like to rehearse. So the whole orchestra's there. He says Sinatra comes out, and he was supposed to have a tubular chime cue. So it gets to the part in the ballad, and there were no tubular chimes. So he said he went to the glockenspiel and just played octaves. And he said
Yeah.
Sinatra stopped the whole orchestra, and I won't repeat what he said, but he said, I need chimes. So my teacher had to drive to Philly and get chimes from Steve Weiss, and he was still in Philly, and drive back to AC with the chimes. He said,
Wow.
once he heard the bells, he was like, that's it.
Yeah. Well, better it happened in a sound check than during the performance.
Exactly.
Yeah. So high school, you studied privately. You had a keyboard background, which was certainly must have been helpful in many, many respects.
Oh, yeah.
And you went to college at Westchester?
Yep, Westchester. Yeah, I had 3 great teachers there.
Who were they? Who were the teachers there?
The first was Joe Goebel. Fantastic. And I think the story goes that when he was a little kid, he actually played as a soloist with the Paul Whiteman Orchestra.
Oh,
Joe,
wow.
Joe was a great arranger, xylophonist, everything. He retired. Then I had another guy, Rich Fitz, come in from the Air Force Band. He played in one of the Air Force bands, and then he moved on. And Chris Hanning was there when I got my master's. Dr. Chris Hanning, who's now the dean of the School of Music. Yeah. So really great faculty.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. And when you got out of school, were you working while you were in school? Were you doing gigs? And
oh yeah. I was doing gigs all the time, all through undergrad and graduate, and I do pit orchestras for local middle schools, high schools,
right.
Anything I could do. I would just play anywhere.
Right. Sometimes that experience, you learn more doing that than you do sitting in a classroom.
Oh, yeah. Go to 1 or 2 gigs. The biggest thing that I learned as a student was dealing with people. Learning your part is one thing, but getting to the gig on time, dealing with different personalities, conductors, different contractors, I think that's a whole art in itself. And how do I make myself valuable to whoever's hiring me, and will they want to call me back? So I'm always thinking, like, how do you get them to call you back?
That's a recurring theme every single week, Sean, of all the professionals say the same thing. I mean, you go to school, you learn to play great, you play Porgy and Bess, you play whatever, you're coming out, you're playing Delacluse, but music's a business. And what you're saying, you have to know how to work with people and work cooperatively, even when you don't feel like being cooperative. It's not about you, it's about getting rehired the next time.
Right. And I think the older I get that I've gotten, it's like, if whatever gig I get hired for, I know there's probably 15 guys within 50 miles that could do it better than me, whatever the gig happens to be. So I'm like, how am I going to make my contribution so valuable that they want to have me back every time?
And I'm sure that's been a part of your great success. I mean, it's not just about playing, is what you're saying.
No.
It's about that's one part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, does the person, I'll get to a gig and I see the contractor or the conductors trying to do something, set up chairs or something, I'll get my stuff ready and I'll say, do you need help with something? Can I do something for you? Because I see a lot of people come into the gig, they get set up, they sit down, they're on their phone, and they're only concerned about themselves. I'm like, no, what is that? What's the expression? A rising tide lifts all ships type of thing. So I try to do that as much as I can outside of just playing.
Yeah. Well, if I was the conductor or contractor, I think this guy's really helpful. And then if he could play, he's the guy,
Right.
Yeah. That's such an important lesson today. And it's not taught in schools. It's not it's like a dirty secret.
Yeah.
It's something about music schools where I think they're coming around, but it's like business is a dirty word. Music business.
Right.
It is a business.
This was funny. I was dealing with a young guy, early 20s, just graduated, and I was teaching with him somewhere. He was doing a substitute teaching thing, and I mentioned the musicians union. I think I said something like, "Oh, did you?" The kid was a flute player, and I said, "Oh, did you see that great article in International Musician?" He's like, "No, what's that?" I'm like, "Oh, it's a magazine from the musicians union." And I kid you not, the kid said, "There's a musicians union?" And he graduated from college with a music degree.
Amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, I joined the union in 1975, and I had to go down to this big building downtown Boston at the time. And Vic sent me down, said, "Tell him I sent you." So I went down. I said, "I'm going to join the union." And my teacher, Vic Firth, sent me. They said, "Oh, well, you got to audition." I said, "Well, I don't really have any sticks." They said, "Well, do you know what a paradiddle is?" I said, "Yes." They said, "You're in."
You didn't even have to play it
to join. You know,
that's great.
It's Al commented here. Oh, Diana's here. Hi, Diana. He's a good friend in Puerto Rico. Al, do people feel good when they work with you? That's a question you want them to say yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
yeah, because I think like I've taken so many mental notes over the years, and I'm like, I tell all my students, you can learn something from every musician, either what not to do or what to do. So I see all these people, I'm like, yeah, I'll never do that. I'm not going to do that. Like the constant hand raiser with so many questions. I'm like, you're being a pain in the neck. Just settle down. You know, unless you bother the conductor during the rehearsal, the better. If you have a question, do it discreetly. You know, you don't have to stop.
What I hate is the people that ask a question that they know the answer to, so they get attention from the conductor. I hate that.
Yep. Yeah.
I hate that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Let's see. We have a comment here, Sean, from David Liu, with a nice picture of him and Al Abel, who we were all missing. It's sort of Sean's signature professional mark. Learned a lot being on gigs with him, including being proactive to offer help with things that aren't in your contract. Perhaps it's the most important lesson. Well, it is a great lesson.
Thanks,
and
Dave.
David, thank you for writing that comment. You know, there's so many podcasts and video castings dealing about music, how to play different things. But I'm glad that these little tidbits of the business are coming out. And for me, having, you know, owned the percussion business, and I'm still involved somewhat, I like that part of what we do. I like the business part. It's kind of fun, and you know, you're interacting with people. It's a different feeling of being rewarded than standing on stage playing your part. That's great too.
Mm-hmm.
But also knowing that somebody, contractor or conductor, asks for you.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know, after a gig too, I try to follow up. You know, if a contractor's hired me for a gig for the first time, you know, I'll send them a quick thank you email. Say, hey, thanks. If you need anyone else, let me know. Because I've done a little bit of contracting and I've hired different people, and just the way they interacted with me on email or the cell phone, I don't want to work with them. I'm like, I ask you if you want a gig. Why do I have to track you down? Like, respond to me. Say, no, thank you, or yes, I would. Like instantly, I know if I want to work. I don't care how well they play. If they're difficult to talk to through email or a phone, I don't want to deal with them.
Right. Well, there's enough good players that you don't have to.
Right.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Sean, if there was a young player who asked you for some advice, somebody coming out of school, in addition to what you've already shared with us, what would you tell them? What advice would you give them?
Usually I say you can't like music, you have to love it and not be able to do anything else. If you're like, well, I kind of like music and maybe I want to do that, by and large, I haven't seen much success with that attitude. I've seen success with the kids that come out and they're like, I am a musician, I have to do music. And I think if they have that attitude and they're willing to do anything like that, like David Liu, who just commented, I taught him many years ago when he was I was lucky to teach him when he was in middle school and high school privately. And I knew instantly he was going to be a success. Super hard worker. took suggestions, and I think that's it. You have to love it. You can't just like it. So,
Yeah.
and I think this COVID situation, my gigs have dried up, live gigs, teaching is weird. But you know what? I can't go a week without playing something and being creative. I have to do it. So that's why I'm doing so many virtual projects,
Right.
doing composing things. It's who
Right.
I am. So I think that's the advice. You have to love it.
Yeah. So you're driven.
Yeah.
You're very strongly driven. Sean, I wanted to make sure you mentioned your Enharmonic podcasts.
Oh yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I really enjoyed being on it, and I think you have some great guests. How could people find the podcast? Enharmonic.
It's on my website. There's a link. It says podcast. It's backstage at the Enharmonic. That's the name of it. Yeah.
Right.
And I was inspired by my friend Chris Coletti, former trumpet player with the Canadian Brass, who's on my Downfall of Paris thing. He had a podcast out, and it said, I forget what the name of it was. It was like 5 reasons every musician should have a podcast. And I listened to it, and I'm like, well, I have all the technology. I have the connections. Let me try it. So I sent out a couple of feelers. I think the first one was Richie Kanata, great saxophone player from the Billy Joel Band.
Mm-hmm.
And what really turned me on to doing it was I started learning stuff from these folks. It was like having a coffee with them. I had a couple set questions, but then everyone goes somewhere else. And I got addicted to it because I know people like listening to them, but being selfish, I learned so much from every guest.
Right.
I can remember key moments from almost every single one. I remember yours. I haven't listened to it in a while, but we were talking about Catch Me If You Can, and the horrendous vibraphone part in that, and that solo. And it was really cool because I've tried to play that. You've seen the music, and we both had this connection instantly with that piece of music. And then we went off on a tangent with John Williams.
Right.
But that's the fun I have, is talking and going off on these tangents and learning from them.
Right. You mentioned that movie and the music. I saw it the other day. They're playing it on HBO or one. So I watched the movie again. Yeah. It's such a great soundtrack, and it's so different than anything else John's ever written.
Right.
It's just the fact that he's originally, as you know, a jazz pianist and it's just, I love hearing, whenever I hear something that he's written, it has its own uniqueness about it, and he's so prolific. It's amazing. It's just incredible.
I know. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I'm just glad I never had to play that vibraphone solo in public. If I did, I wouldn't be talking to you.
You and me both. That, and I never had to play bolero on snare drum. I always grabbed.
I did that once.
Okay.
Yeah.
No. So Sean, what are some of the other highlights of your career? You'd say, is there one or two things that really kind of got you so excited just by doing or working with certain people?
Yeah, let me see. In no particular order. I think having a piece premiere at Carnegie Hall that I wrote, and me getting a private box to watch this orchestra do it. I had worked with a youth orchestra up in New York years ago, and then one of the organizers was doing another international youth orchestra, and he emailed me and said, "Hey, would you like to write a piece for this concert?" But it was very ambiguous. I'm like, "A concert? Oh yeah, sure. What do you want?" He goes, "Do whatever you want. You're a percussionist." And I kept asking him more questions. There was a little bit of a language barrier. He's Turkish. And I kept saying, "Where's the concert? Who's doing it?" And he said, "Oh, the concert's going to be at Carnegie Hall." And then it was like, hold on, everything's different now. Yeah. So I said, what are the specifics? What do you need? How long? How many instruments? He said, "Do whatever you want." And I was like, ugh. So I wrote this piece, Kaku Kapula, Fear and Neutral Buoyancy. Many years ago, my wife and I were out in Maui, and we went swimming to see the great sea turtles, and a barracuda was a few feet from me, just motionless, staring at me with its teeth. And I'll never forget it. I probably screamed underwater. No one could hear me. But it was life-changing, that moment, seeing this horrendously, potentially dangerous thing in the most beautiful part of the world. And I wrote this tone poem, and it was premiered at Carnegie Hall. So that's one thing that really, yeah. And they pointed at me. I got to stand up in the box, and I was thinking Gene Krupa was there, back in the 30s, or the Beatles.
Yeah.
That was one thing. Another one would have been working with Frederick Fennell. I just got the Grover email. I didn't check it out yet. You had a PDF of the Frederick Fennell stuff.
PDF of his advice to the percussion section.
I'm going to download that. But I used to work for 5 years. I worked with the great Allentown Band.
Right.
Yeah, a premier concert band. So I loved all that stuff.
Yeah.
They're 100 and something. 128th anniversary. There was like a year of festivals, and they had all these great guest conductors. They had Francis Macbeth. They had guys from the Marines and whatever. And then they said, Dr. Fennell is going to come do concerts with us. I almost fell on the ground. He had to be at least 90 or so. And, he was very diminutive, his size. And he comes out with his long hair. And we were playing, what was it, All Souls Day. And there's the chimes in the beginning. Mm-hmm. I had the chimes. And it's one of the few mental pictures I have of a conductor cueing me. I'll never forget it. I'm thinking, this is Dr. Fennell. And right at my first chime, he pointed at me, and it was like the hand of God was pointing at me to play. It was like, and then I got to hang with him afterwards and, had food. And so those are two big ones. There's been others too. But,
well, he's a legend. And the only time I ever got to meet him or work with him, he conducted 100-piece marimba orchestra at West Point.
Wow.
The recreation of what they did in Chicago.
Right.
So they got Dana Kimball got 100 marimba players on, and we played a lot and Fred Fennell conducted. It was a hoot.
Wow.
It was fun.
Let's see. Do you want to? I have two more if you want them.
Yeah. Absolutely.
With my jazz quartet years ago, I had been gigging around town and wrote some stuff, and we got a recording session ready, and I happened to get Bob Mincer to play on 3 of the charts on the CD. Right. And talk about nerve-wracking, because I knew when he came into that studio, there was going to be, it was almost like a Sinatra situation. Like, we got to be ready. This is Bob Mincer, Right. So 3 of the tracks we played, 2 of them were originals of mine. And one of the coolest things ever, we did 2 takes of each tune. Basically, He said, I'll come in and do 2 takes and then I'm out. I'm like, thank you very much. So we did the first take of one of the tunes. We all went into the control booth and we're sitting there listening. And I could hear Bob moan during his solo. He went, I said, what? Didn't you like something? He goes, I don't know about that lick I did. I said, well, you want to do it again? And he goes, no, man. Every album I love has a little bit of fuzz on it. Let's just keep it. I'm like, wow. Like, that was a great thing. I don't know what the fuzz was. It all sounds incredible to me.
That was great. That's great. Sean, we have a question from Diana Valdez about percussion ensemble pieces. Have you written percussion ensemble pieces? If so, where can they be found?
I have a couple arrangements out. Yes, they are not available yet. I arranged a piece, a Shostakovich piano solo. I forget which one it was. The problem was I did a lot of them back when I was in college.
Right.
And I have to update them. And I don't have the original, the floppy disks and all that business. So I have to go through and I have to re-enter it. I have a big Sesame Street one, a couple others. So I do have them, but they're just not available to the public, really.
If somebody wanted to contact you about writing something for them, or maybe working together, they could contact you through your website, right? SeanJCompany.com.
Yeah, there's a contact button in that can be.
Yeah. So Diane, if you want to contact Sean, that would be a good way to do it. Your ex-student David is taking a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek pot shot here.
I'm sure.
But still need to learn how you manage to slick a pound of Crisco in your hair and don a leather jacket in the middle of July. So,
David, I'm so cool, Dave. I got it covered, so the jacket doesn't bother me.
It's good. That's great. And Craig wanted to add something with our discussion about "Catch Me If You Can." That vibe part is a beast. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And when it was recorded for the movie, Alan Estes played it. Alan's a phenomenal percussion player out in L.A. and an awfully nice guy to boot.
The last one I have for you, you had these groundbreaking moments or whatever. It's a project I'm doing right now. Back in the 80s, I lost so much sleep because every night I would tune into The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson to hear Doc Severinsen and the band. Right. Those guys, I've heard people that are in their late 60s, early 70s talk about when they saw the Beatles on TV. I wasn't around yet. My Beatles were Doc Severinsen and Tonight Show band, because if the listeners have heard them, I don't even have to explain why. But I would listen to them, and in 87, they released their first recording. Then it was followed by a couple others. Well, I was doing a guest, what's it called? I was a guest presenter at a jazz festival out here in PA. I was the rhythm guy. They had a brass guy, etc. The brass guy and I had become friends on Facebook years ago, and he's obsessed with Doc Severinsen. His name is Jay Webb, killer player. He just played with the National Symphony this past Christmas for their Duke Ellington show. Anyway, it was one of these round robin things where all these bands were set up in different locations in this high school. So I go in, I'd say, play for me, I'd evaluate, whatever, and then he would follow me. Well, it just so happens that they were doing a shuffle, and I was saying to the kid, listen, you have to do this. I demonstrated. I said, you have to listen to Ed Shaughnessy. I said, with the Doc Severinsen band, the recordings he made with Basie, this guy could shuffle like nobody's business. I went away. The trumpet player came in. He was dealing with the same chart. He said, listen, kid, you have to listen to Ed Shaughnessy and Tonight Show Band.
That's funny.
The host was in the room for both of these sessions, and we were getting a coffee or something. He said, do you guys know you both said the same exact thing about Ed Shaughnessy? And it was like, I don't know, little hearts became, I'm like, what? Ed Shaughnessy? He's like, yeah. So he asked me to be the drummer in his band, and now we have a band called the Doc Severinsen Tribute Band.
Oh, wow. Great.
And we're trying to do as like religiously, not religious, but as authentic transcriptions as possible, like gospel truth. So Jay has nailed most of the stuff, and we're on YouTube as well. And hopefully when this is over, we'll be able to get out on the road and put on full-scale productions doing tribute to Doc Severinsen and Tonight Show Band.
So the name of the band is Doc Severinsen Tribute Band?
Yeah, the Doc Severinsen Tribute Band. I think the best spot to follow us is on Instagram. It's the DST Band.
DST.
The DST Band. And you can go to Jay's website if you want. Google Jay Webb Trumpet. You'll find it, or whatever. But we did 3 charts in late January, early February. We did Getting Sentimental Over You, Bugle Call Rag, and another one. Oh, I forget the other chart. But we have 3 on YouTube that you can check out. And we got really close. We got really close to the originals.
Wasn't Tommy Newsom one of the arrangers of some Tonight stuff? Yeah,
definitely. And it's a bear because Jay had some of the written parts, like from Newsom and the other arrangers. But as you know, when you're a drum set player, you look at the chart and you hear the recording. I'm like, yeah, he did nothing that I'm looking at. So a lot of my work was listening and going, all right, he put a hit here, that hit's not there. So I tried to get as close to Ed as an homage or to emulate him as much as I could.
Right. And the truth is, he played the same. If he played the same chart one night and the next night, it would sound a little different anyway.
Oh yeah, yeah, right.
You know, I saw Ed give a clinic at Passaic many years ago, and it was incredible. He said this. He said the difference between drumming for jazz and rock is 80% drums, 20% cymbals. Jazz is 80% cymbals, 20% drums.
Oh yeah.
And I remember that's great, just a great little tidbit of advice.
And he's the guy, when I was reading Modern Drummer back in high school, I remember him saying, you know, in high school, I'm like, how do I become a better jazz drummer? The interviewer said, how do you become a better jazz drummer? He said, play along with Nat King Cole or Oscar Peterson. He said, a lot of their early recordings had no drums. He said, that's the best play along in the business. So that's what I've been doing. I have a whole series. I have like 2 or 3 videos of me playing along with the Nat King Cole trio and kind of doing step by step. Yeah.
Yeah. No. What great advice, because both Peterson and Nat King Cole had impeccable time. I mean,
unbelievable
talent. Yeah. No.
And no tricks. Like that was recorded back in the 40s. So like, you know, everything you're hearing actually happened and they could do it live. There was no way to do a trick.
In those days, the recordings were a photograph, so to speak, of what was really happening. And now recordings are their own animal, where things are pieced together. And I saw an old Boston Pops video online of a Christmas show, and one half of White Christmas, Charlie Smith, who was the mallet player in the Boston Symphony, was playing chimes, and all of a sudden they cut over and I'm finishing it because I was still in. And I'm thinking, those were not the same night. Probably a month apart.
Oh my God, that's incredible. I'll have to look for that.
Yeah, I'll send you the link to that.
Awesome.
So, Sean, now with the lockdown, are you making plans so that in next year, do you think things will open up for you, or what do you think will happen sooner? Do you have any feel for it?
I don't know, because there's recommendations on what people should do and people aren't doing it. So it's like up and down. It's like things look like they're getting better. And then, a couple hundred people go have a party. It's like, so right. I don't know. My fingers are crossed that it looks like hopefully people will get smarter and just go, let's everyone suck it up for 4 to 6 weeks. Everyone stay home so we can get this over with. So that's what I'm hoping for. Right. I don't know anything about the science. I don't know if cold weather is going to have, maybe cold weather will keep people apart. So maybe that'll help.
Well, yeah. Well, I tell you one thing, I'm not going down to Florida for a while. Right. It's, we go in the winter, and I said to my wife, I don't know this year. I don't know. Right. We're going to do it.
Scary. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I hope it's over soon. But one of the benefits, I guess, is my tech ability. Now I can record at my home here. I have everything I need. I have the software. About 8 years ago for my birthday, my parents bought me all this recording gear, microphones, this processor here. And it was literally 8 years ago. I didn't even take it out of the box until COVID hit. Because I knew how labor intensive it was going to be for me to learn how to do this. Yeah. And now that I was locked in the house, I'm like, let me figure it out. So now I can do a lot of multi-tracking, and I've been doing a lot of different projects with it.
Well, that's a great use of time. Of learning new skills while the lockdown is here. No, that's great. And are you teaching online now, or how are you doing lessons?
I've done a few lessons online. That's all we can do. And the school I work in, come fall, we're going to be doing virtual for about 2 months, and hopefully we can get back into actual, classrooms and stuff.
Okay, great. Sean, is there anything else you wanted, activities coming up, or anything you want people to know about that you wanted to mention?
Not really. I think it's just that Doc Severinsen tribute band and the Downfall of Paris. Those are the two things that I think are at the top of my priority list right now. So if you could go over to the YouTube channel and check out Downfall. The other thing about Downfall, I forgot. Everyone on the project, let me just tell you who's on the project. So for brass, Chris Coletti is playing trumpet 1 and trumpet 2, former trumpet with the Canadian Brass. Tawny Lin, who's an LA session player, is on French horn. For trombone, I got the principal trombonist of the Philadelphia Orchestra, Nitzan Haros, who's a friend of mine, and David Earle from Ithaca is on tuba. And now the drum line is just ridiculous. It's me on snare drum, David Liu on snare drum, Bernie Dressel, and Clayton Cameron. That's the snare drum line. I know. I'm like, I just threw it out there. I said, guys, can you do it? They're like, let me look at my date book. Yeah. So those guys are playing snare. And I have Dave Nelson from the Philly Pops, who's actually the principal timpanist from Philly Pops. He's doing bass drum and cymbals, and Chihiro Shibayama is doing cymbals. She's from New York. So that's the ensemble. But it's available at Here Now. Well, go to my website. You can find the link. But any proceeds we get from the digital sale of this thing, I'm going to donate to Bugles Across America.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
They play taps instead of, I don't know if you've seen those horrible things that look like trumpets and they're like an MP3 player. Yeah. So Bugles Across America is trying to stamp that out and have live musicians play for fallen service people. So that's where all the proceeds are going to go for that. So Downfall of Paris and the Doc Severinsen tribute band. Yeah,
well, I really enjoyed, amongst other things you've done, the Downfall of Paris. When you sent me the link, I watched it like 6 times. I said,
thanks for the quote. It's funny. On social media, I'll see different people sharing it, and then someone will say, like, it sounds better on Fife. And I'm like, who is this person? And then I find out they're a fife player in the old garden, DC. I'm like, oh, okay, all right.
Sure. Yeah. There's always gotta be those people. But people can really reach you and find out about everything you're doing through your website, SeanJKennedy.com.
Exactly,
Sure.
right.
Thanks for being my guest today. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
I hope you stay safe and please stay in touch. And we will hopefully have you another time.
That'll be great. I look forward to it, Neil. Thanks. You stay safe
Sean,
too.
Okay, take care,
thanks.
man. All right,
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. If you have any questions about any of the products that Grover Pro makes, you can go to our website, groverpro.com. You could always reach me, ngrover@groverpro.com, just kind of like this. Oh, here, the shirt. I thank everybody for watching this, and stay safe and be good, and peace.